Hey everybody, welcome to Virtual Crosswalk Napa. We're so glad you've joined us on this Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers out there. And it's also a day where we really celebrate women and their journey and their contribution to our story, personally and collectively. We've got a special guest for you today, which we'll get to in just a minute. But for now, fasten your seatbelts. We have some updates from Dar. We've got some music from Jennifer. Got a cool little meditation video that I think will bring you some hope and some peace, and then a great teaching coming your way, mainly because I'm not the one doing it. So look forward to this in just a moment.
Welcome to Crosswalk Community Church, located in the beautiful Napa Valley. Glad you came online and chose to join us to celebrate our service with us together. But the first thing I would like to do is celebrate all women. It is Mother's Day. And I would like to celebrate all women born to a mother. That's how we do it at Crosswalk. And now I would like to remind you that next Sunday is our annual business meeting. We will be meeting via Zoom since we're not allowed to meet in person. So if you are an active member of Crosswalk Community Church, you should be receiving an email with a ballot attached to it and all of the items that we will be discussing as far as the annual meeting. We will be voting for 2 officers. We will be voting for 3 people to join the Board of Stewards. We will also be approving or covering our budget for the next year. And then also we will be talking about a change in our Constitution and getting approval, hopefully on that, to make that change into our Constitution and bylaws. The other thing I would like to remind you about is on Sunday mornings, we have a Kids Connect where the kids get together with Sol, who is our main anchor teacher for back at Kids Crossing. So if you have kids, I'd like to encourage you to have them sign on so that she can get connected with them and cover a little bit of a lesson with them and just check in with them and see how they're doing. So that's a great opportunity for the kids to get together. Pete is also on there and spends a little bit of time talking to the kids as well. So I want to encourage you to do that if you have children. The other thing I'd like to remind you about is on Monday night, we're having our dinner group. So we do this also via Zoom, and we meet together at 6 o'clock, and you can bring your dinner along or you can bring a beverage. But it's a great chance to just check in and see how you're doing and anything that you might need prayer for, that type of thing. So join us on Monday night at 6 o'clock. Just let us know so we can send you an invite for that. And then also I want to remind you about our Wednesday group called Virtually Together. It's Wednesday at 12 noon or at 7 o'clock at night, which for many people that's lunch or dinner time. So again, bring your meal, bring a beverage, and join us in on the conversation. And we're doing a series right now called Embracing a Life of Meaning. We've had some great conversations. But again, you get to check in and just see how you're doing. But it's a way to connect with other crosswalkers. So I'd like to encourage you to do that. And then I also want to thank you for your financial support and your prayer support for Crosswalk and all that we have going on. That we know that it's just tough times, but we want to just thank you for your support and for being a crosswalker. We miss you and can't wait to be back together again.
Breaks the power of sin and darkness, whose love is mighty and so much stronger. The King of glory, the King above all kings, who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder, who leaves us breathless in all for me. Fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. You say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am
So today we have a special guest speaker for you today. Some of you who are just tuning in to Crosswalk may not know that I was supposed to be on sabbatical starting the first day of May, and I've put that on hold for some season of time before things let things calm down a little bit. Did not want to be gone while this was all going down. So when we have a little bit better idea what's going on with that and know where things stand, I'll think about sabbatical, maybe as soon as the fall, though I don't know about that, or next summer. We'll see. That day will come, but it's not now. And so one of the people that I had scheduled to come speak in person was Jenny Matheny, who's going to introduce herself. And as I was looking at the calendar, I reached out to her and said, hey, you can't come in person, but we'd love for you to consider if you'd want to send one in via video. And I'm so glad that she said yes. She is such a capable person, such an incredible mind, so full of energy and insight. And she just offers such depth of clarity and wisdom in this teaching. I think you're going to love it. So she's going to introduce herself a little bit and let you know who she is and all that. But without further ado, Jenny Matheny.
Good morning, Crosswalk Community Church. I wanted to thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Jenny Matheny. Our family used to attend Crosswalk during a season of transition a few years ago. For those of you who may be familiar with Karen Kenny, she's my mom. Hi, Mom. Also, my dad, Alan Kenny, was a lively member of the Crosswalk community before he graduated into heaven. So yes, my maiden name is Jenny Kenny. When our family was in a difficult season, this tough transition place, not knowing what was next for us in life, if ministry would still be in our future, Crosswalk was this beautiful place for us to rest and heal. I cannot say enough about your Pastor Pete and Pastor Dar. Those churches that become a part of your story of healing that you would give anything for. Crosswalk is one of those churches in my story. I often feel like one of the beautiful descriptors of this church community is see how they love. Our family has received this love, and we all have been changed and become more like Jesus because of it. Since our time at Crosswalk, we have moved to Kansas. I've just finished my first year as the assistant professor of Old Testament at Nazarene Theological Seminary in Kansas City. This new position for me is one of those areas that I'm reminded that God knows my heart, the dreams of my heart, more than I do. I never imagined teaching at a seminary level, and I love it. All of this to say, thank you, Crosswalk, for being a part of my family's adventure story. And I just kicked the camera. You may be aware that today is Mother's Day. I do want to acknowledge that it's a wonderful day to celebrate moms, but I also am aware that it's a difficult day for many for a variety of reasons. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. But I'm especially grateful to share with you today a very messy story about a mom in Genesis, with my own mom watching, which is fun. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. From all of our family stories, God is faithful in the mess. That one of the things that comes across constantly is that we're still seen. We are loved, and God is not done doing beautiful things in all of our stories. So I would like to pray before we begin, and I'm going to go ahead and keep my eyes open. Feel free to close yours if you'd like to. Precious Lord, thank you for this invitation to know you and your word through community and through the ways that you've communicated to us. Thank you for those who love and serve at Crosswalk during this difficult season of COVID-19. May you strengthen each of them. I pray for Pastor Pete, who is supposed to be on sabbatical right now, Lord, that you meet him in places of rest and renewal as he continues to serve. I pray a season of sabbatical open up for him soon. Thank you for this Crosswalk community and the impact that it has to love and to partner with so many others. It's truly a community that loves big. I pray for this message to be a source of encouragement for those who may be feeling isolated or disappointed, and even just sad. I pray for your joy and peace to be upon each one as they watch for you throughout their day. I pray they will be surprised in the places where you are present with them. and the deep places that you remind each one that they are loved. In the name of Jesus, amen. So if you ever wonder, is my situation or my family too dysfunctional for God to work? Today's story will tell you, nope. God works within the mess, brings beauty out of broken things to bring us back into right relationship, to reconcile broken relationships, and to heal our deepest needs. There is always hope. Today, I want to invite you into a story in the Old Testament about a woman who is often forgotten and often in the shadows. I imagine if I was to sit down with her today, she would admit that her life did not turn out as she had expected it. Maybe you felt this way too. I think she would also mention that she spent way too much time in her life being competitive with her sister, living in a game that she would never win. She would mention that her relationship with her father was really disappointing. He was a businessman, all about the bottom line. He treated everything and everyone as a commodity, even his daughters. The woman I am focusing on today, and you may have guessed it, is Leah. You can find her story beginning in Genesis 29. I won't be able to share every detail, but there is a moment in her life I want to focus on, and we'll get there soon. You may want to have your Bibles ready. I'm going to read a few verses out of the Message version. So I'll give you a quick recap of who Leah is and why she is important in the story as one of the first families of faith. So this story is one of the earliest in our faith. It reveals the Lord working through an ancient culture, through a very dysfunctional family, and continually revealing to them and to us that God is working out his redemptive purposes to create and to bless. The Lord continually reveals faithfulness to do what he said he would do, even when people mess it up big time. So these early stories in Genesis reveal the way God calls out and forms a people to be incredible instruments of blessing. Just when we think, oh wow, that messed the plan up, game over. Nope, God works within the mess in surprising and miraculous ways. Early on, God calls this man Abraham and his wife Sarah to become part of this plan to bless the world. Through a miraculous birth, they have a son Isaac. This son Isaac marries Rebekah, and they have twin boys, Esau and Jacob. I know Pete preached recently in January on Jacob, so I will spare too many details, but we'll mention that Jacob obtains his twin brother's Esau's birthright by striking up a deal over some stew, and then later deceives his father, who cannot see, by dressing up like Esau, and at the urging of his mother, to steal Esau's blessing. Jacob is quite the deceiver in that story. So here we come to the story that we're going to talk about today. So when all that came out after the blessing was deceivingly stolen, I don't think that's a word, but Jacob had to run away to his uncle Laban's house because Esau was enraged. So while on the run to Laban's, Jacob stops at a well and chats with the local shepherds. That's kind of like where you meet people back then. He asks them, do you know Laban? And they do. And not only do they know his uncle, along comes Laban's daughter, Rachel. So he meets her at the well. He returns with Rachel to meet his uncle, and guess what? He ends up falling madly in love with her. Back then, that was a little more normal. So during our time, we don't normally do that with family members. But again, ancient culture, different customs. So Rachel's name in Hebrew means you. As she is described within the story as the one Jacob loves. She is the younger sister and is described as beautiful of shape and of appearance. Some of these descriptors we see also of Abigail in 1 Samuel 25 and Esther. We see Abraham describing Sarah this way in Genesis. These beautiful women. So Rachel has a sister, an older sister named Leah. Leah, the older sister's name means cow. Being from a shepherding family, though, these names do make sense. Can you imagine being named after your family business? My family owned a 7-Eleven growing up for many years. So I can imagine our family could have names like Slurpee or Big Gulp. So Leah's eyes are also described as weak or soft. Some have suggested that this means they lack pizzazz. Maybe she didn't see very well. There's been a few suggestions. These two sisters are often compared in art and literature, as Rachel is the beautiful loved one, and Leah, not so much. So the text invites us to compare them as well. But for today, I'd like to touch on Rachel a bit, but really focus on Leah. So Jacob arrives at his uncle Laban's. Laban welcomes him to stay. About a month in, Jacob confesses his love for Rachel, and he says he will work for her for 7 years for this daughter's hand in marriage. So I'll read from the Message version, Genesis 29, 16 through 20. Now Laban had 2 daughters. Leah was the older and Rachel the younger. Leah had nice eyes. That's one interpretation, or weak or lacking pizzazz. But Rachel was stunningly beautiful, and it was Rachel that Jacob loved. So Jacob answered, I will work for you for 7 years for younger daughter Rachel. It's far better, said Laban, that I give her to you to marry than to some outsider. So yeah, stay here with me. So Jacob worked for 7 years for Rachel, but it only seemed like a few days because he loved her so much. But it's interesting. Laban's taking advantage of Jacob here. He's quite the businessman, and he has him work for Rachel. Jacob came with nothing, and it was customary during this time to contribute a certain amount to secure this woman you're going to marry and to be betrothed. But it's estimated that at the going rate, what Jacob agreed to was about double what it normally would have been. So this gives you an insight into Laban's character. And remember, these were very ancient customs, and they sound quite odd to us now. So finally it comes time to marry Rachel, the apple of his eye, the longing of his heart. Jacob tells Laban, it's time. I've completed my 7 years. So here comes the twist in the story. We're going to read Genesis 29, 21 through 24. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. I've completed what I've agreed to do. I'm ready to consummate my marriage. So Laban invites everyone around, throws a big feast, a big party. At evening, though, he got his daughter Leah and brought her into the marriage bed, and Jacob slept with her. And Laban also gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her maid. So morning came, and there was Leah in the marriage bed. Jacob confronted Laban. What have you done to me? Didn't I work all this time for the hand of Rachel? Why did you cheat me? Laban pulls a switcheroo on the wedding night and gives Leah to Jacob instead of Rachel. Well, that stinks for everyone, except maybe Laban. Lots of questions I know are coming to your mind. How did he not know? It must have been quite a party. Other questions you may be asking, wouldn't this be the best pop-up book moment? I was thinking the same thing. You know those books. I can just imagine as you turn the page, it's Jacob sitting up in bed, like looking next to him in utter shock, like who's this? And then I started thinking there's other good pop-up Bible book moments. These might be more for adults, well, that version. Anyways, but even more positive ones, maybe Jesus appearing to his disciples after he resurrected in the locked room. Boom, there he is. Maybe the transfiguration moment in Luke 9. We have Peter, James, and John kind of sleepy, and all of a sudden, there's Jesus chatting on the mountain with Moses and Elijah, swapping Exodus stories. Well, anyways, back to the story. I love pop-up books. So we have Laban giving a reason, though, why he deceived Jacob. He says he appeals to their customs and traditions, and that it's the older sister that marries before the younger. So here we have Laban offering Rachel as well. Basically, he says to him, you can have her, the one you really love, if you complete the bridal week with Leah, and then you can marry Rachel. But you got to work for me for another 7 years. You can't help but wonder if Jacob reflected a bit about how he had deceived his father because of blindness of sight. And now he had been deceived during this switcheroo at night. So maybe for a moment, he thought about his brother Esau, how he must have felt after being deceived. But one of the most difficult parts of this story for Leah is that she is forced into a marriage by her father. Maybe she had yearned for a day to have her own family, and here she's married to the same man as her sister. Of course, there were different customs then, and then often that even don't reflect the Genesis ideal. But nevertheless, Leah is in a marriage and is the one who was not picked first, but she did marry first. So she's in the shadows of her sister and is not the one her husband really wants. I imagine in her life there's so many disappointments. So here she is, unloved and unseen in her marriage. And back then, of course, bearing children is really important, as you can imagine. And even though Leah felt unseen by Jacob, God saw her in this difficult place. So in Genesis 29:31, it says, when God realized that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb. So in the Hebrew, this literally means that the Lord saw that Leah was unloved. So listen, here in this life of frustration and disappointment, the Lord saw Leah. Similar to another woman in the shadows and on the margins, like Hagar, the Lord sees. This was true then, and it's still true today. You may feel like you are not noticed by God, but you are, especially in the midst of this strange time of isolation with COVID-19. You are seen by God. Okay, back to our story. Leah is seen by God, and wow, he opened her womb, and boy, did she conceive. But I want you to listen to the names of her children. What's fascinating is that she wanted her situation to change. She wanted Jacob to love her, to be connected to her. And sorry to burst your bubble, but this never happens. But listen to the names of her children. They express her desires for things in her life to be different. She is hoping that through bearing children, she'll be noticed and loved by Jacob. She experiences rejection, and by no fault of her own. She didn't ask for this marriage, but because of the legal customs back then, she had limited options. So, Genesis 29:31-34 in the Message. But Rachel was barren, and Leah became pregnant and had a son. She named him Reuben, basically meaning, look, it's a boy. This is a sign, she said, that God has seen my misery, and a sign that now my husband will love me. Then she became pregnant again and had another son. God heard, she said, that I was unloved, and so he gave me this son also. She named this one Simeon. God heard. She became pregnant again and with another son. And she said, now maybe my husband will connect with me. I've given him 3 sons. That is why she named him Levi, meaning connect, attached. So each child name reveals this longing, pain, and disappointment that Leah has in her life. Basically, the first one, now my husband will love me. I was unloved, and now my husband will connect with me. Can you imagine naming your children after disappointments of your longings? On a lighter note, what might you name your kids right now after something you long for in your life? To be honest, and this is very silly, but right now I might name my kid Roots because I want to get to the hair salon. Okay, back to Leah's kids. But where I want to stop in the Leah story, though I will sum up some of the rest briefly, is the name of the next son. Listen to this one. Genesis 29:35. She became pregnant a final time and had a 4th son. She said, this time I'll praise God. So she named him Judah. Praise God. Then she stopped having children. I will paraphrase what scholar Tammy Schneider writes about this moment. She says, the reason for Judah's name will focus on the Lord alone. This one is different in that she is not asking what the Lord can do, or will change in her situation. She simply praises the Lord. Here, Leah praises the Lord in his name, Judah. It is as if, and I know I'm taking a little bit of liberty here, as if she finally sees the Lord in all this mess. That the gaze God has had on her throughout her entire life, she finally returns this gaze back to God, Leah and the Lord. I want to enter into this story and tell her, this is enough for you, Leah. I know life is really disappointing and not what you dreamed about as a young girl playing with your stuffed unicorns in Padamaram. But the Lord sees you. The Lord loves you. And if you keep your gaze on the Lord, you will find contentment. If you look towards Jacob or your sister, you will continually be hurt and disappointed. My romantic heart hopes that Leah was in this place for a long while and returned there throughout many moments in her life. And this is where I want to focus, just to be Leah and the Lord. This relationship will not come up short. I wish I could end the story here, but there's chapter 30. So in chapter 30, the sister competition picks up with new intensities. In verse 1, it says, when Rachel saw that she was not bearing any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, give me children or I'll die. So for Rachel, being favored and the loved one was not enough. This story will continue of these sisters in competition, having children through their servants, similar to surrogacy, but without the same rights as we have now. Later, Leah will have 3 more children, including a girl, Dinah, and Rachel will eventually have 2 sons, Joseph and then Benjamin. And then she'll die right after giving birth to Benjamin. So this Judah moment didn't seem to last forever. I sense Leah's story, though, connects with ours in many ways. We take our gaze off the Lord and begin to look around us and get caught up in the competition, focusing more on what we think we have missing. And even within the messiness of these dysfunctional families, moments, God is still working. There's still hope. Be encouraged that God is still at work in your life, no matter how messy it feels in the moment. There's much more to say to Leah's story. I want to focus on the fact that Leah's life of disappointment, it did not start with this difficult marriage. It actually has been part of her story her entire life. One thing I find profound in the biblical story is that Leah and Rachel's identity and worth is not bound up just in their role as mothers and the children they have. This story also gives voice to their disappointment as daughters of Laban. Leah and Rachel both experienced a difficult one under their father. Though this message kind of is mainly focused on Leah, I want to demonstrate another area of disappointment for both women. Later in chapter 31, Jacob hears the Lord tell him to leave and return to his homeland. Rachel and Leah agree that they should all leave. They acknowledge in this chapter that their father treats them terribly, like strangers, and even they use the language that their father sold them, treating them like property when they married Jacob. They use this legal language to disavow their father. Leaving will be a risk. Laban has a hold on that family that is shrewd, and they will need to leave without telling him. Though tragic, this is one of the things that I love about the biblical story. These women's voices are heard. They acknowledge their frustration and pain living with their father. Their lives have been full of difficulty and disappointment, but they are still seen by God, and their pain has a witness. Leah will not be forgotten as the biblical story unfolds. In fact, in another book of the Bible, Ruth, we see that Leah is praised in the final chapter. Another fascinating fact about Leah is that although we don't know when she dies, she was buried in the promised land in a cave bought by Abraham. And here she's buried with Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob. Throughout this story, though, she does experience disappointment, even though she is technically the primary first wife. But here we see her honored by being buried in the family resting place. So even though so much of her life was a struggle with her sister and unmet desires to be loved by her husband Jacob, God was working through these frustrated, disappointed moments in life to continue the plan to redeem and to bless. Schneider writes that her husband's love is what she seeks, but her character evolves and that need lessens as the story progresses. I cannot help but wonder at this point, are there pursuits in our own lives, things that we're seeking, that are deep sources of hurt or disappointment? Perhaps this story of Leah is an invitation to acknowledge these hurts and disappointments and to place our gaze back to the Lord, the one who sees us and is with us and will never abandon us. And similar to Leah, there may be times we feel unnoticed by certain people in our life or deeply disappointed by the way things have turned out, especially in the midst of these losses during COVID-19. Yet God is aware and with you and working a grander story than you may ever be aware of. So what I want to bring home in this story on Mother's Day is that Leah was a mom who lived a life of many unmet desires, a life of difficult family dynamics and crazy dysfunction. But I sense there were also moments, such as in the birth of Judah, where she turned her gaze in praise to the Lord, where she stopped focusing on everything that was wrong and looked to the one who was watching her and was with her. Do you want to know something special about Judah? If you continue on in the Genesis story, he makes a lot of blunders, like huge ones. But at the end of Genesis, he makes this beautiful, sacrificial, and unselfish move. He ends up offering his life for his younger brother, Benjamin, his half-brother, the one who is Rachel's kid. Judah grew up seeing all this tension in the family, how his mom was overlooked, And if you want to be encouraged that there's always hope, just look to these stories in Genesis. Judah seemed to be a lost cause early on, but he ends up doing some amazing things. And another fun fact, Jesus comes from the lineage of Judah. So I want to end with a story of a woman who I admire greatly. She's lived a life of disappointments in several ways, but has found courage and hope in God in spite of her circumstances. I sense that this woman's gaze continually meets the Lord every day. She refuses to let life's disappointments be bigger than God's love and grace. Her name is Johnny Erickson Tata. One powerful question asked of her when thinking about her life now is, do you feel like you've missed out? I cannot help but wonder how often Leah would have responded to that question. Leah, do you feel like you missed out? I wonder how we might answer that question if we're honest. Are there areas that we feel we've missed out? So here's a bit about Johnny's life. She had a diving accident in 1967, and it left her at 17 years old as a quadriplegic. So she's in a wheelchair her whole life, unable to move her arms and legs. She's an advocate for disabilities. She's written several books. She's founder and CEO of Johnny and Friends. She's had several ministry that just provide for tons of needs, camps for kids, ministry training. She's allowed God to powerfully work through this tragedy that happened over 50 years ago. She's 70 now. So after years of reflecting on her disability, and even humorously, she was in a kind of a thing with Larry King. They were talking, an interview, and she just said, she joked, she's like, I'm not a professional quadriplegic. She said, some days are really hard to face. And I can imagine that, right? And there's this quote that I read that I'm going to share with you in a minute. But for Johnny, living such a physically limited life, this just brought me to tears on a prayer retreat a few years ago. There's this moment of clarity that hit me, that at some point, this new creation with Jesus is real. Jesus being the first to resurrect with a new body, this changes everything. The question that was asked Johnny that just really penetrated my heart was, do you feel you missed out? And this is Johnny's response. I haven't been cheated out of being a complete person. I'm just going through a 40-year delay. And God is with me now, even through that. Being glorified, I know the meaning of that now. It's the time after my death here when I'll be on my feet dancing. Johnny's short sentence revealed to me this reality of what we're looking forward to, of heaven, and what the hope of Jesus' resurrected body means for our bodies. So this is the reality of the resurrection, new life now and new life to come. So for those of you who do not have children like Johnny, and really this applies to all of us, men and women on this faith journey, we've all experienced disappointments like Leah. Johnny gets it. We live in this in-between time where, yes, perhaps things did not go as you planned, but incredible new things are happening. There's still more to come. The Lord sees you. You are seen and loved, and you are not alone. So my prayer for each of you today is that even if in your life, in certain areas, you've been really disappointed, things that just haven't turned out as you've planned, and that the main thing is you know you are loved. I pray that your hope will be filled in Jesus. My prayer is that as you walk about your day, and we all have really limited lives right now because of COVID, all the places we can go, but similar to a pop-up book, that when you turn the corner or page in your day, that the love of God will surprise you in beautiful moments of wonder. You're not alone. You are deeply loved by the creator of the cosmos, the one who is limitless in providing all you need and all the needs you have and your deepest longings in Jesus. I ask this for each of you today. Thank you for having me with you. Have a great one.
Wasn't that great? I just loved what she had to say about how Leah wasn't quite sure where things were going to go, but so many interesting twists and turns about faithfulness and what she saw and depth of story and character development. I mean, it's just the Bible is so rich with that, and I'm so grateful to Jenny for bringing this today on this very special day when maybe a lot of people feel like Leah does, men and women alike, where you feel like you've never quite measured up, never been quite what you hoped it was going to be, and yet God is still with us, God is faithful, and we're able to experience joy and hope even now. If there's anything we can do for you in this week ahead or at any time, I hope that you'll reach out to us so that we might be able to support you in your life and in your journey, whatever that might be. If it's prayer, if we can show up and serve you in some way, we want to help you do that. So please reach out to us. Again, happy Mother's Day to those of you who are mothers, and happy Mother's Day to all of you because you all had a mother. And on this particular day, we celebrate women. And so if you are a woman watching this today, we're grateful for you and so grateful for your contribution to the history of the world, much of which has gone unsung. But we see it and we recognize it and we celebrate it. So have a great week. We'll see you next time. Thanks.